Hey everyone, I wanted to do one more video this week, this one on agreement with pronouns and subject-verb agreement. So when we're talking about agreement, we're always talking about singular and plural nouns, pronouns, and verbs. So basically, if we have a singular noun, we also want to have a singular verb. A singular pronoun should refer to a singular noun, okay, because a pronoun is always taking the place of a noun. So you want to make sure that if the pronoun's plural, it's taking the place of a plural noun. If it's singular, it's taking the place of a singular noun. So this video, I'm going to basically just cover some of the most common issues that come up with agreement related to pronouns and subject-verb agreement. And a lot of times that issue, or at least one of the biggest issues, involves indefinite pronouns. Okay, an indefinite pronoun is a pronoun that's not necessarily referring back to a specific noun. So for example, the pronoun he is a personal pronoun. And so if I say he went to the bank, then your understanding of that sentence depends on your understanding of who he is. So hopefully I've made that clear from a previous sentence or in the context of our conversation. But an indefinite pronouns do not necessarily replace a previously understood noun. So if I say everyone goes to the bank at some point, then you don't necessarily need any prior information to understand that sentence, to understand who I mean by everyone, because I'm speaking more generically. So what makes indefinite pronouns tricky is that most of them are always singular, even though it often seems as if they should be plural. So like everyone, for example, seems to be talking about a lot of people. So you would expect that to be a plural pronoun, but it's actually grammatically singular, right? And if you look at the end of the indefinite pronoun, everyone, we're basically saying each person. So that's why we would say everyone is happy as opposed to everyone are happy. So, these indefinite pronouns are always singular. Basically, any pronoun that ends in one body or thing, and I actually didn't put the things here. So like everything, nothing, those are also singular. Plus, either, neither, each, little, less, much, these are always singular pronouns. So they always need to be matched with singular verbs or other singular pronouns. So, whereas these pronouns are always plural, both, few, fewer, many, others, several. Okay. So, when we're dealing with agreement issues, okay, revolving verbs, subjects and verbs. Okay, again, we're making sure that if we have a plural verb, then we also have a plural subject, singular verb. This is only really an issue if we're dealing with present tense verbs. Most past tense verbs do not distinguish by number, with the exception of was and were. That would be the exception. I believe that's the only exception. But the general rule with verbs, in case you get mixed up, if the verb ends in S, then it is a singular verb. If it ends in S and is present tense, or we're dealing with was, were, if it ends in S and is present tense, it's a singular verb. Okay, if it is present tense and does not end in S, then it's a plural verb. And again, past tense, future tense verbs don't matter other than was and were. So it's a little counterintuitive. You generally expect plural things to end in S, but with verbs, it's the opposite. The singular verb is the one that ends in S. The plural verb is the one that does not end in S. So in these sentences, I present a number of common issues that people have with subject-verb agreement. So if you would like to do this as an exercise, then go ahead and pause the video and then restart the video when you're done. But I'm going to now go over the answers for each of these sentences. So the first sentence, Annie and her brothers learn at school. So we're using the plural here. And that's because we have two subjects and the word and between them. All right. So if you have two subjects joined by the word and, that's always plural. Okay, there's no situation in which that might be more. There's no situation in which that might be singular. So we're definitely going to always use the plural verb in that case. Second sentence, either my mother or my father is coming to the meeting. So in this case, we again have two subjects. However, they're not joined by and, they're joined by or. And when we have or between two subjects, the rule changes because this is not necessarily always plural. And in this case, it's clearly both options would be singular. So either my mother is going to be there or my father is going to be there. So either way, there is only one parent who is coming. So we're going to have the verb is. The rule when you have two subjects joined by or nor is to always agree the verb with the last subject. Okay, in this case, the last subject is father. Father is singular. So the verb is going to also be singular. But in number 3, the dog or the cats play outside. In this case, cats is plural. Cats is the last subject listed. Cats is plural. So we're going to have a plural verb. The dog or the cats play outside. If I switch the sentence around and said the cats or the dog, then the verb would be plays. So it depends on the order. And if you have more than one subject ending with or. Fourth sentence, one of my sisters is going on a trip to France. So in this case, you might see sisters before the verb and think sisters are, sounds right. But the subject here is actually one, not sisters. So whenever you have a subject followed by a prepositional phrase, like of my sisters, okay, or anytime you have a prepositional phrase before the verb, the subject is going to be before the preposition. So of is the preposition, the prepositional phrase of my sisters. The word sisters is technically called the object of the preposition. An object of a preposition cannot also be a subject. So the subject is always going to be before the preposition, not after the preposition. And again, if you think about the meaning, we're not saying all my sisters are going, we're saying only one. So it has to be singular. 5 is similar. The man with all the birds lives on my street. So again, the subject here is man. Man, the subject comes before the preposition with. Okay. We're not saying where the birds live. So be on the lookout for subject-verb agreement where you have a prepositional phrase before the verb. The subject will be before the preposition. 6th sentence, each of those books is fiction. So again, this is an indefinite pronoun issue. With indefinite pronouns, each is going to be singular. Right? So even though it seems like we're talking about a lot of books, each is singular. So we are going to have a singular verb here. And then nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody, again, is an indefinite pronoun. It's singular, so we need the singular verb, the one that ends in S. All right. Okay, so now some indefinite pronouns, we're coming back to indefinite pronouns here. Some indefinite pronouns can be singular or plural. All right, so for example, the following indefinite pronouns can be singular or plural depending on the context. All, any, more, most, some, none, and some. And so here are some examples. All of the cake is gone, or all of the cupcakes are gone. And this might seem to contradict a rule I mentioned in the previous exercise where I said if the prepositional phrase comes before the verb, then ignore the object of the preposition and look at the word before the prepositional phrase. Technically, all is still the subject. The difference here is that if it's one of these words before the preposition, then we do have to look at the word that comes after the preposition, because that word will tell us whether all is singular or all is plural. So because cake is singular, we're going to have the singular is. Because cupcakes is plural, we're going to have the plural are. Okay. But this only applies to cake with basically these 6 words. All right. Otherwise, you should be able to tell based on what word comes before the preposition whether that word is singular or plural. And it doesn't matter, what comes after. So again, if I said each of the cupcakes, then the verb becomes is, because each is always singular. All right. Pronoun agreement. Okay. So with pronoun agreement, we're not necessarily looking at the verb. We're looking at the noun the pronoun refers to. And in some cases, the pronoun might refer to an indefinite pronoun. So look at these sentences and try to determine in each of the sentences, we have a pronoun agreement issue. So a personal pronoun, like for example, she, he, it, they, him, her, etc. A personal pronoun that is referring to a noun where the personal pronoun does not match or agree with that noun. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to try to do the exercise. Each of them have an agreement issue. So if you want to do the exercise, pause it and then restart when you're ready. I am now going to go over the answers. So, first sentence, after World War I, Amelia Earhart took flying lessons. She learned quickly, but they cost her most of her salary. So in this one, originally the sentence said it cost her most of her salary. So what is it referring to? A personal pronoun always needs to refer to some noun, either in the sentence or in the previous sentence. So it is referring to lessons, but lessons is plural. It is singular. The plural form of it would be they. Okay. Number 2. Okay, so I gave 2 options for how you could correct number 2. So at first, everyone could not believe his or her eyes when she deliberately put her plane into a spin. Okay. So the problem with using there in the original sentence is there is referring to everyone. Again, there has to refer to something, so it can only be referring to everyone. Everyone, as we know from indefinite pronouns, is always singular, whereas there is always plural. So one way to fix this is to change there to the singular, his or her. And this was a common fix, a common suggestion for how you would fix a sentence like this. there are a few problems with using his or her. It's okay as a correction. It's grammatically, it's correct. One problem is that his or her just sounds awkward. It's something nobody ever says. And generally you do want, believe it or not, you do want to produce writing that, while formal, actually matches something that someone would actually say. So that the writing doesn't come across as too confusing or convoluted. So his or her, it's awkward, it's wordy. If we can avoid it, then we want to avoid it. Some would also argue that his or her is, is unnecessarily binary, and that we're moving towards a society that recognizes more gender fluidity. So, some people might take issue with his or her for that reason. Okay. So a better solution, if you have a situation like this where you have a pronoun that's referring back to an indefinite pronoun, is to try to just make everything plural. Because again, part of the issue that we have is that we're obviously talking about more than one person. Okay, so it's a grammatical issue that everyone is a singular pronoun. So if we can just replace everyone with a plural noun, then now we don't have the issue. And it actually matches something that someone might say. At first, people could not believe their eyes when she deliberately put her plane into a spin. Okay. It could be audience members, it could be spectators, right? So, trying to find a way to make the antecedent plural is often a better solution than making the pronoun a plural, trying to make a plural pronoun singular. Okay, in a case where we are obviously referring to more than one person. And that's not to say you can't ever use everyone or these indefinite pronouns, but in a situation where you're going to refer back with a personal pronoun, it makes more sense just to not use the indefinite. Same thing with number 3. So each spectator would gasp when he or she heard her cut the engine off. So in this case, we're switching the plural to a singular to match each spectator, but we can also, and it would be better to just change each spectator to the spectators would gasp when they heard her cut the engine off. Right. Now 4 is a little different because in 4, we are referring to a hypothetical aviator as opposed to referring to a bunch of different aviators. Same idea basically applies. I mean, we could change an aviator to aviators. When aviators want to break records, they will work very hard. But it is okay to imagine a hypothetical aviator and to give that aviator a gender. Okay. When an aviator wants to break records, she will work very hard. And depending on the context, it may make more sense to choose a specific gender. Because this context, we're talking about a female aviator. So it sort of makes sense to just make our hypothetical aviator female. Okay. You want to be more careful when you're making a hypothetical person male because you don't want to come across as reinforcing a stereotype. So like, for example, if I said that, when a mechanic wants to fix a car, he will do something. That sentence does reinforce a stereotype that mechanics are male. And it may be true that most mechanics are male, but some of you taking this class may be female and with a career goal of becoming a mechanic. Okay, so you don't want to reinforce a stereotype or reinforce even if it's not intentionally exclusive or an exclusive attitude about, what types of genders are ideal for, say, a certain job. Okay, because of course there are plenty of female mechanics, and so you don't want to act as if there are not female mechanics. So, if we're not talking about a specific person, then again, just keeping everything plural avoids all of those messy issues, right? Okay, so last thing I want to cover with pronouns involves pronoun case. So when we talk about pronoun case, we're talking about not singular versus plural, but whether a pronoun is the subject of a sentence. If a pronoun is not the subject of a sentence, and by which I mean the subject of a verb, then it becomes an object pronoun. Okay. And so this is an issue with personal pronouns. Subject pronouns would be he, she, we, they, who. Object pronouns would be him, her, us, them, whom. So, if you've ever struggled with whether to use who or whom, who is a subject pronoun just like he or she, or I would be another one that I didn't list here. So if it's the subject of a verb, you use who. If it's not the subject of a verb, you use whom. Okay. I is a subject pronoun. Me is an object pronoun. So again, I did not list those here, but they are in this exercise. So when trying to determine whether or not to use the correct pronoun case, then again, you're asking, is this pronoun the subject of a verb? So if you would like to try to find the errors in the sentence or these sentences, then pause the video. Otherwise, I'm going to go over the answers. So the first one, everyone asked Joan and me to speak at the convention. So you might say, well, Joan and I sounds correct. I've always been told to say Joan and I. But again, it depends on whether the pronoun is the subject of a verb. So, and one way to fix this, or to determine whether or not it's correct, is to take Joan out of the sentence, because adding Joan to the sentence should not change the pronoun. So just as you would say, everyone asked me to speak at the convention, you would also say, everyone asked Joan and me. Okay, because the case of the pronoun is determined by its relationship to the verb, not to another noun in the sentence. So similarly, if I made Joan and me the subject, if I said Joan and I asked Billy to speak at the convention, then me becomes I, because now it's the subject of asked. Joan and I asked Billy to speak, just as you would say, I asked Billy to speak. So anytime you have a pronoun that is joined with another noun and the word and, just get rid of that noun and get rid of the and see which pronoun makes the most sense. Okay. Another issue, sometimes you have a pronoun followed by a noun that clarifies the pronoun. We modern Amelia Earhart fans would love to have that video of these historic flights. Again, the best way to solve this would be to get rid of the clarifying pronoun, or in this case, the clarifying phrase, and just see which pronoun would make sense in the sentence. So us would love to have video would not make sense, whereas we would love to have video does make sense. And then 3-4 covers that whom issue. Again, the question is, whether the pronoun is the subject of the verb. So in this case, in number 3, the verb is inspire. Would is a helping verb that goes with inspire. So Amelia Earhart is doing the inspiring here. Okay, so we're going to use whom. Okay, this pronoun is not the subject of inspire. Amelia Earhart is the subject. One way to try to approach this is to think about, okay, if I tried to answer this with the pronoun he or the pronoun him, which pronoun would I use? So for 3, I would answer it, Amelia Earhart will inspire him today. So because I answered it with him sounds like whom. So that's why I chose he or him. So whom would be the correct pronoun. It also works with she or her, or they or them. 4, who in this class will learn more about Amelia Earhart? If I answered that, I would say he will learn more about Amelia Earhart, or she will learn more. But either way, it's a subject pronoun because will learn, the verb, who is the subject of that verb? Not Amelia Earhart. Okay. And then class, remember this is a prepositional phrase, so the subject is before the preposition. So that would be he, so it's subject, so who would be the correct pronoun to use. All right, so that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.